Good morning, everyone. I know it's bright and early on a Saturday morning. Usually you wouldn't see us at this time, but if you're just waking up, you are waking up to news that the US and Israel have bombed Iran again. However, this has been described by President Trump as a major combat operation. And he has also warned us to be prepared for American casualties. So that is a definite different tone from what we heard in June of last year when he authorized the bombing of 3 nuclear facilities. And Iran has already struck back at places across the Middle East, which have U.S. military bases. Because of that, we are bringing on our military expert, Bobby Jones. He is a retired Navy commander who has been in charge of forces in the very regions that are now being struck. Bobby, I can't thank you enough for being with us and lending your expertise at such a crucial time.
No, thanks for having me. I wish it was under much better circumstances. This is I think people need to understand it's not just the strikes that have happened, US Israel, the retaliation is significant too by Iran because it signals the tip off of a much larger conflict. So, Susan, if I can I just give people background on my experience there real quick?
Then,
So,
yeah.
so I was in the Navy for 23 years, 22 years. And even the sign behind me, I was in charge of a coastal riverine squadron, now called Maritime Expeditionary Squadrons. Long story short, Fifth Fleet headquarters got hit today, and I was in charge of one of the task forces for Fifth Fleet, 56.7. I had sailors stationed in Bahrain. I had sailors stationed in UAE. I had sailors stationed in multiple locations, not all over just the Middle East, but the world, but specifically the Middle East. The areas that have been struck, the video that is now going very viral of Bahrain, the naval station in Bahrain where Fifth Fleet is headquartered, getting hit. I know that area very, very well. As a matter of fact, if it's where I think it is, we had stuff stored there. We actually use it as a makeshift headquarters at times, etc. This is something where, to be completely honest, if I'm going to be very blunt about how I view this, we had a nuclear deal with Iran that was negotiated by Barack Obama, and now we're here. And I honestly believe that the Trump administration said, we cannot have this deal negotiated by the black guy who he hates with all his passion. They blew up the deal, and now possibly sailors, airmen, soldiers, Marines are now under direct threat. We haven't gotten any casualty reports from Bahrain. Now, to be honest, most of Bahrain have been evacuated because they anticipated this. When Soleimani was killed a few years ago, I was stationed in that area, and we had to evacuate and move people to certain locations because we knew some type of retaliation was coming. But the retaliation then was telegraphed. We basically knew where they were going because they told us, etc. So now here we have a situation where they have gone after strategic headquarters. To be very blunt, they've attacked Al Udeid in Qatar, which is basically the air hub for the Middle East for the United States. They've attacked Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, which is the naval hub in the Middle East, and they have also attacked Kuwait. They've also looks like they've attacked Saudi Arabia. All of these various locations around the area. Now, the beautiful thing is most of them have air defense systems in place. But the fact that Bahrain got hit, where the Navy is headquartered, is significant for two major reasons. The Arabian Gulf, Persian Gulf, whatever you want to call it, has a history of naval conflict. And it's because of the Straits of Hormuz, which is why, if you look at a map, UAE was targeted. The Straits of Hormuz is the most important strategic waterway in the world. It's where all the oil from that area goes through, tanker wise. We've already got reports, various people online like INT Defender, who are saying, hey, companies have just shut down going through the Straits because it's too dangerous, right? And so when people ask, why does this matter? Well, because it's going to affect you, your gas prices, the clothes on your back. All of those things are going to have a direct impact But that's one reason. And then the second reason, honestly, is by holding the Straits under hostage, it's a leverage point for Iran. Now, the IRGCN is already, that's the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy, is already out running around trying to retaliate, etc. You have two strike groups, two carrier strike groups in the area with another one on the way because this was anticipated. Again, all of these military forces, specifically naval forces that don't need permission to fly over countries in one area, is a significant danger. The escalation is there. And if the regime in Iran feels as though that their existence is threatened, they will do any and everything. Let me be very clear. Any and everything. They won't care about diplomacy. They won't care about this. They want to retain power. So you need to be very careful. We have kicked the hornet's nest. And nobody can tell me, no one can tell you, Susan, what the end state is supposed to look like. Because last I checked, I was told by the same administration that after Operation Midnight Hammer, that the nuclear program was obliterated.
Right.
Obliterated. Now this morning, they're talking about they want to get rid of the missiles. Well, let me be very clear. Someone who worked for the Missile Defense Agency, the amount of missiles that they have is significant. They're cheap, most of them short to intermediate range, and they will cause havoc on our air defense systems in that area. So we've now moved the goalpost. And the thing about it is, Israel can't tell me what the end state is. The United States can't tell me what the end state is. And I remember a candidate running for president saying, we're not going to have any more stupid wars or endless wars.
And this is the eighth intervention in a
Yep.
little more than a
Yep.
year.
Yep. Yeah, it's continuous. Now, I can see the chat, and I agree with you guys. Distractions, distractions, distractions. The Clintons did their testimony, their depositions. They're going to come out on video, supposedly, allegedly, unedited, according to Comer. We'll see, and you need the distractions. But let me tell y'all something. You can tell that this is so haphazard and not serious. The president of the United States is not even in Washington, D.C. He's in Mar-a-Lago. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs and those people are in Mar-a-Lago, and you have sailors and service members under direct threat through your actions, and you don't have the goddamn common decency to be in D.C., either at the PIOC or at the freaking Pentagon, watching and making sure this happens, because you cannot be inconvenienced with your schedule. See, this is how it's little things like that that can show you that people are not serious. They're not serious about what's happening here. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Jordan has been attacked. UAE has been attacked. Saudi Arabia has been attacked. Bahrain has been attacked. The world is on fire.
Yeah.
Solely due to your actions. And you can't even be in the goddamn White House. I'm just sorry. I have a problem with this as someone who knows what it's like to sit there and hopefully not get hit by a damn missile where you're stationed.
So, Bobby, we've obviously gone to war in Iraq twice.
Mhm.
You can you contrast the amount of planning that went into the Persian Gulf War in 1991, the Iraq War in 2003 versus what we're seeing right now in Iran?
You're having what I call a degradation of in-state, meaning before we went in 91, President Bush, the first one, who, by the way, was the youngest goddamn combat pilot in the Pacific in World War II and knew what war was. You know, we can talk about politics all day. You cannot argue that man's war record. He understood, along with Colin Powell, Vietnam War vet, and Norman Schwarzkopf, Vietnam War vets, that he said, hey, you break it, you buy it, and you better have a damn end state, a desired end state. They said the desired end state is to drive Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait,
Right.
and then make sure he is contained. And they did that. They had the air campaign for 6 weeks, less than 100 hours on the ground. They ran him out of Kuwait. They contained him. Game over. Parades when everybody come back home. Definitive end state. We go into Iraq. Let's not even talk about Afghanistan. We go into Iraq with the whole weapons of mass destruction thing, and no one could really tell us what that was. And then no one could tell us what the end state was. What was mission success? We never got it. And so we found ourselves in a quagmire that made Vietnam look like a freaking picnic when it comes to length and intensity of forces being used by international coalitions. There for damn near 20 years almost. So that was the beginning of this nebulous politics not being able to understand warfare.
Right.
Okay. Now we're in the second and more dangerous iteration of that. And what I mean by that is when you have a bunch of cowboys who have never served, who've never been in conflict, i.e., Donald Trump, i.e., the Stephen Millers of the world, these people who have his ear. And then you have someone like Hegseth who just wants to be called a good boy and be pleasing. What you have is no defined end state. You didn't have a defined end state in Operation Hammer. You didn't have a defined end state in all these iterations. And now you've been hit. There's no way you're going to be able to sugarcoat this. The United States of America and its sovereign property or sovereign bases have been hit. I'm literally watching Bahrain. I'm like, man, are you kidding me? Okay. And you have no response. Now you're telling the American people, the same American people that you wanted to sit there and say, we're not going to have any dumb wars, blah, blah. Now you're telling them, hey, be prepared for sacrifices. No one voted you in to do that. That is the problem, right?
Right.
And you still cannot tell us what does success look like. What is the point of having this many strike groups in the Gulf? What is the point of having this many aircraft in the region? What is the point of all of these strikes that you've started? And now the world is trying to call an emergency UN Security Council meeting.
Hmm.
What's the end state look like, President Trump?
Right.
What is it? He hadn't said it. He hadn't said, he's like, we can't allow them to have a nuclear weapon.
Right.
How is it that you obliterated a program and now you're telling me, they were a week away from having this thing? So when was the lie told? Was it told then or is it told now? But more importantly, what does success look like? If you cannot say what that is politically and realistically, then what we are doing is getting ourselves into, quote, a forever war.
So back in the run up to the 2003 war with Iraq, we had Colin Powell put his reputation on the line, go before the UN. We had the George W. Bush administration, for all its flaws, go to Congress and make a case. This was not something that was done, in the middle of the night, willy nilly after. But so let's contrast to what we're seeing now. There have been talks
Hmm.
with Iran, with the president's son-in-law, uh, Jared Kushner, with Steve
Yeah.
Wyckoff,
Yep.
as recently as 2 days ago, and we were told the progress was being made. Um, Now, without getting any kind of congressional approval, we are unilaterally at war with Iran. Talk
Yes.
about just how mind-bending that is, Bobby, because, for those of us who did not serve, you understand the careful planning that these operations take. I,
Right.
as a layperson, I'm not seeing that here.
Right. So a couple of things. Number one, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, how much diplomatic experience do they have? Zero. So when you send clowns to a party, expect a circus. They're not professionals. They're not serious. They don't understand diplomatic measures and metrics that are necessary to actually drive towards something. So everything that we heard was nice, and it was nice fluff, chaff, as we say in the military, right? And I never bought it. If you had seen some of my live streams here this past week, I literally said we're going to go to war because you do not have the movement of forces that have happened. See, there are different orders that you have. You have like a plan org and then a warrant org, and these are orders, different levels of orders that get you ready to go to war. And the military had been moving towards a warrant org, which means, hey, action is imminent, this, that, and the other. And then when you saw the movement of people and material, okay, basically, no matter what came out of this conference, they had predetermined that they wanted to go to war. We have various reports that the president was frustrated at the lack of options that he had militarily, meaning he needed to do something to show that, hey, we're tough. But he kept hearing from, hey, the blowback could be significant. He heard from General Kane himself that you don't want to do this, but General Kane, doing what he's told to do, has accepted, hey, he wants to do it, we're going to do what he orders, right? And so now we're in the beginning of these operations. The fog of war is still there, meaning we don't know what reports are accurate, what reports are real. There have been some pro-Arab media that said an all-girls school got hit this morning, where there were at least 40 girls that were killed. I mean, all of these things are going to be thrown in the air to distract from what possibly is actually happening. But in my humble opinion, as someone who was not in the room but could read forces and have been there and done that, I honestly believe they predetermined that they wanted to take some sort of military action. Period. Period. And no matter what came out of that conference. And again, I believe the spine of this is the fact that the black guy negotiated an agreement that the entire world agreed on. Let's remember, it wasn't just the United States. You had the EU and everybody, John Kerry, all those guys and girls in a room hammering out this deal. It worked, and it was a legacy thing, and Trump hates it. And so now he subconsciously tells you all the time that I deserve the Peace Prize. I deserve the Peace because Obama got it. Because Obama actually negotiated some peace. And it drives him up a wall that he's not him.
Can you go through some of the details of what the agreement was with Iran and, of course, the history of Trump blowing that up in his first term?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is the two major principles were very simply put, they agreed to international monitoring of their nuclear stockpiles, and they would not enrich past a certain point. Basically, the point to make sure that you have peaceful use, and there could be surprise inspections, there could be as many inspections, and the IEA agreed upon it, and the world said, hey, and they actually started a nice rotation of when to check. They had spot inspections where no one knew that they were coming. These things were happening. And in response, the world gradually eased sanctions on Iran, right? And let's take the time machine and go back here. You know, this happens. The 2016 election starts, and then all of a sudden we're back to this. Will they? Are they? Is this a good deal? And Trump is backing out of every deal that Obama created, to include the climate accords, the this deal, all of it, trying to take things back because he was like, this was a bad deal for America. It's a bad deal for America. No, this was not a bad deal, right? And so understand that we had what he was trying to negotiate just now. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
He tried to renegotiate something that already existed. And then we got a report less than 24 hours ago saying that, hey, Iran basically agreed to do the same thing with the monitoring and the enrichment. It literally just came out. But the warning order was already in the air, and so now all of a sudden we're off to the races. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. There's a predetermination that happened here. That is why I believe that General Kane tried to warn him against doing this, because he could tell that hell bent high water. They wanted to do something.
Yes. I want to ask you about one of Donald Trump's Truth Social posts in the middle of the night. He posted an article from the right wing site Just the News. The headline is Iran tried to interfere in 2020-2024 elections to stop Trump and now faces possible war with the US. I'm going to go analog and I'm going to show it on here because we're not
Wow.
going fancy this morning.
Wow.
It is an amazing thing for a president to post as he's sending our troops in to possibly die in a war.
Yeah. So welcome to the grasping era of the Trump playbook, grasping at straws, doing something that has significant effect on people and the world, and now grasping to justify it because, again, it was predetermined. Number one, even if that's true, right? Even if that's true, you haven't complained about the 2024 election at all. You haven't, because you won.
Right.
Let's be honest. Number two, Russia did the same damn thing. Are you bombing them? Are you bombing your handler, Putin? Because again, here we have a situation where now American lives are on the line. And so I think he did not realize he's probably watching the fallout of it in the middle of the night. And because most of Americans were asleep, this, that, and the other, the way it works, the reaction starts on the other side of the world and works its way as the sun comes across the earth. And now he's starting to get that, oh, wait, these people actually care about this. This wasn't going to be some limited Patriot, not Patriot, Tomahawk strike, that kept Americans out of the way and we were able to strike and you can talk trash. No, Bahrain got hit, dude. The freaking headquarters of Fifth Fleet got hit. okay? And your air bases and everything are under attack as well. This is significant. I think he's grasping at straws. First, I heard of Iran being involved in any election interference. Um, and I don't think that is coincidence that it happens the same night that we have strikes and are getting retaliated against. So, whatever. What's the end state? Tell me what the desired end state is. Maybe we should ask Netanyahu what it is, because
Yeah,
that's
let's
the other
talk about
piece
that
here.
because, Netanyahu, of course, has his own problems in Israel. He and his wife and many of his associates have, faced uh, charges of corruption, accusations of that.
Mhm.
Netanyahu has been clamoring for a war with Iran for at least a decade. He wanted to try and goad several other presidents into a war with Iran. Nobody would bite except for Trump. So is he the real mastermind here? Let's walk through what's going on in Israel, what their objectives are.
President Donald John Trump is the most easily manipulated leader the United States has ever had. Let me start there. That is my opening thesis. That's first. Secondly, Benjamin Netanyahu wants to stay in a constant state of war to avoid a lot of the prosecutions that are happening internal to Israel that their Supreme Court wants to bring. People forget before October 7th, that man was about to get booted out of office.
Right.
And because they're in a state of war, they have emergency provisions activated. They are not having elections. Elections are suspended, but it is basically reliant on them being in a constant state of combat, right? The thought process is, hey, we're at war, we can't have elections. Now, mind you, Trump is the type, he would try the same thing, but in the United States, heck, we had elections during the Civil War,
Mhm.
during 2 world wars. We do elections, period. Period. Okay. So that doesn't fly here. But understand, when you are in consistent combat operations in certain areas of the world, you can sit there and say, well, we can't have an election right now. We don't want to change leaders in stride, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. So here's the thing. You can go and find a clip of Benjamin Netanyahu saying the exact same thing he said this week in the 90s when I
Mhm.
was in college, because he's been saying this every year. He goes to the UN and says the same thing every year. And we have had multiple strikes against Iran over those time periods, multiple administrations, multiple strikes to, supposedly Operation Midnight Hammer was supposed to be the be all end all. And yet here we are right now with thousands of Americans in the AOR, area of responsibility, and we are actually doing kinetic strikes against one another, led by Israel, a lot of it coming off of their intel and their planning and this, that, and the other. So, what am I? I'm presenting the facts. The facts are, you've said this for 30 years. The facts are, we've had multiple strikes for 30 years. The facts are, now you have Americans in harm's way. And the facts are that, hey, Donald Trump has been the person to say, hey, whatever you want to do, we'll do.
Yeah.
So,
In the US, we even though we have been involved in conflicts, to various degrees since World War II, obviously, Vietnam, that was, resulted in a huge loss of life, obviously for the Vietnamese, but for Americans. We've had the Gulf War, we've had the war in Iraq. We bombed Afghanistan and were there for a couple decades. We've struck Syria. Yes, there have been many military conflicts since World War II, and our new world order was established. However, those wars have not come here to the home front.
mhm,
Talk to us about when you have a war like this, when you're dealing with Iran that, is a country of 93 million people with
right.
with strong military capabilities. Um, yes, we know that this war is blowing up way beyond its borders in the Middle East, but do they possibly have sleeper cells here in the US? Could we see
So,
American citizens, non-combatants actually pay a price?
and that's the part no one's talking about, and I wonder if that was even briefed to the president as far as retaliation. So, I see a couple of people in the chat like Melissa and Michelle, so they know, right? Those of us that have worn a uniform and seen intel briefs and stuff in the past. Here's the thing that you've got to be concerned about. Iran is one of, if not the, still one of the largest independent sponsors of terrorist cells in the world. They have cells over, all over the world. And if activated, you won't even know it. And here's the thing I need everybody to be aware of. When I say terrorist cells activated, everybody's going to have that stereotypical idea of someone with brown skin and this, that, and no, bruh. No. They're cells because it's an ideology that you subscribe to, any color of the rainbow, any ethnicity, both genders. We have history seeing that, right? The whitest looking white dude could be part of one of these cells. And when you attack Iran, and if the Ayatollah Khomeini is like, okay, we're at holy war, this, that, and the other, everything, everything is going to be attacked. And Melissa's saying in the chat, she's absolutely right. Her background, she knows this is activating terrorist cell globally. This is why Macron is out there right now saying we need an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. Not because France had anything to do with it, but France is an ally of the United States. France is seen as, quote, the West, unquote. And what's going to happen is they are now in the limelight. The UK is now in the limelight. You just, there is a complete underestimation of the ripple effect. And this goes to the core of Trump's philosophy his entire life. He does not think strategically. He thinks of in the moment and, hey, just do this right now. We'll deal with the fallout later. And that's what's happening. The problem with that is, ladies and gentlemen, is when you're talking about lives, when you're talking about policy that has ripple effects, this could ripple for years. And we don't know it because of this very short-sighted view that he's showing. Listen, I am the most pro-American person that you will find, right? Put my life on the line. My brother did it. You know what I'm saying? A family history of doing this. And it pains me to see us to think so short-sighted in a situation that has ripple effects that could affect you when you go to the grocery store, that can affect your kids when they go to the mall or wherever they go to hang out these days. This is the type of thing that historians will look back and say this was an inflection point.
Bobby, the regime in Iran has close allies with China and Russia. Talk to us about those geopolitical forces.
So here's the thing. China and Russia and Iran were doing military exercises in the Persian Gulf right before this happened. For all we know, I don't know because I'm not plugged in, but they could still be there.
Mm.
The miscalculation could go through the roof because of these actions. Now you have Iran, United States, China, Russia in a very small, confined naval space when you look at the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz. Someone doing one thing that's misinterpreted. Now you're at war with China. Now you're at war with Russia. Now you're at war with Iran. And by the way, United States, we'll probably be damn near by ourselves because none of our allies wanted us to do this
Right.
in the first place. So we now have this whole mindset of, cowboying it up, John Wayning, ironically, of all people, saying our forces, this and other, and Trump is hyping it up. Part of this, too, is because of what happened in Venezuela, and he saw a military operation go relatively smoothly,
Mhm.
considering. He believes that the United States military is invincible. We are not. We are not. We are good because of not just tradition, but because of planning, be able to integrate with allies, understanding, and having strategic goals. That's when we're at our best. Going back to Desert Storm. What we're dealing with now is someone who's like, the military is for lack of a better term, it's my metaphorical penis. I need to show the world how big and badass I am, and the military can handle it. Never mind the fact that he would never go and do it himself. And never mind the fact that we have a Secretary of Defense that is not pushing back. If General Kane is saying we don't want to do this,
Mhm.
as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, whose primary role is to be the senior advisor on military action to the President of the United States, and he's saying don't do it, you listen. And this is the guy that he handpicked and brought out of retirement.
Right. And
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 he's
that's
telling you not to do it.
that's a huge contrast to how presidents have conducted themselves previously. I mean,
Yep.
we saw George Bush Sr., was relying very heavily on the Joint Chiefs. Norman Schwarzkopf was the face of the Gulf War. You traditionally, we've seen the presidents rely on those military experts. And this seems to be a big break with that.
It is because historically speaking, your policy that you form is only based on what your military is able to enforce and back up, right? In this case, you have someone who wants policy to be the primary driver. Hey, military, figure it out. Um, I ideally too, and this is the other part that I don't understand about Trump and how he's going about this. If you send Witkoff and Kushner to be the primary negotiators, right? What guarantees do you think that they would have when it comes to military action?
Mm,
Because understand Witkoff's background, finance, real estate, Kushner, same thing.
right.
What do y'all know about military forces? Who the hell did you send with them to sit there and have these guarantees? Because understand the policies that you're creating, which you said you want to negotiate from a position of strength. That's what he and Hexef say all the time. Okay, what does that strength look like in actuality? We're about to find out because you broke off negotiations. Within 24 hours, you struck, and now there have been counterstrikes against you. Okay. You have allies where they allow us to be based there begging for a ceasefire. Qatar just said it. I'm pretty sure you'll see Jordan, Saudi Arabia, everybody else say the same thing. And we have not heard anything but the speech that the president gave from Mar-Largo about it. So I just, I'm frustrated because this not only is avoidable, but okay, now you're doing it and you're doing it terribly because you're not listening to the people who have been on the ground and done it, and that's the military. Let me put it this way. The second I heard a second carrier strike group was heading to the Middle East, I'm like, well, we're going to war. We're going to war. All right. And Kane and company have to do that because they're told to do it.
Hmm.
But then when it became evident to them that the president was hell bent on this, that's when they started the evacuations of certain forces from certain areas.
Hmm.
So they knew they were being ignored. When you saw that, you know, it's bad. It's bad. And right now as we're talking, Bahrain is still smoking.
Bobby, we have watched Trump do a purge of military officers that don't
Mm,
agree with his agenda.
mhm.
We've seen him, last fall get all the generals together, the top military brass, and lecture them on his vision, and uh, in a spectacle that was unlike anything I've ever seen from a president. What is the state of, military officers now? Has he successfully purged out competent voices who, will stand up and say no? Has it gone that far?
Well, I will tell you that number one, the morale is low, especially amongst the officer corps. Which is why when you see him speak and try to create political rallies with his military, he talks to junior enlisted. He
Right. He
goes to
just
Fort
did that a
Bragg.
few weeks ago in Fort Bragg.
Yeah, Fort Bragg. He's done it in Norfolk, places that I'm just like, are you kidding me? Right. But when you talk about the officer corps, and the senior officer corps. And mind you, my peer group that is still in, they're senior officers. I'm not just saying this. I've talked to them, various ones of them. Morale is low. They see all the stuff that they have worked for their entire career as far as being able to plan and execute and to be good at their jobs, be eradicated because you have a paranoid, imposter syndrome ridden person as the SecDef being told what to do by someone who uses the military as a beard in Trump. That's the best way I can put it. And because of that, when you look at the subject matter expertise that has left the Pentagon, that has left the DOD in the last um, I'd say since he came back in office, it's unprecedented. It's unprecedented to have this type of turnover. And mind you, we're not just talking about, okay, they're high ranking officials, key positional points, the head of Southern Command, the liaison to NATO, who, by the way, is looking at us like, what the hell are y'all doing? You can look online right now. Because guess what? This ain't going to be a NATO operation. This is the United
Right.
States. And because we don't have the liaison who was there, who was well respected, she was very well respected by everybody. Who the hell we got there now? Okay. These are the type of things, because when you're dealing with a superpower and you have international relations, relationships matter. Okay, relationships matter, as well as the subject matter expertise. Don't No offense to General Kane, he was a 3-star. He wasn't qualified to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs by statute. Not me. It's not my opinion. This is this thing called the law. You have to be a 4-star. You had to have combatant command or service component command to be the chairman. They waived all of that for him.
Mhm.
Okay. So now he's in the seat, got his 4-star, leapfrogged all these other people because Trump liked him. And now history's going to record you're the guy that was in the seat when this happened.
Mhm.
Okay, you got and Thelma put it very bluntly. You got a bunch of JOs, junior officers, who are wearing senior officer uniforms because they got promoted because they're there and they're likable to what Trump is wanting to do. Now, here's the thing: these missiles that are flying, they're not ideologues; they're physics. If you don't know how to knock them down, if you don't know how to prevent them, if you don't know how to kill the kill chain, is what we say, then you got a problem. You got a fundamental problem. Trump doesn't care about that. He doesn't think about any of that. They want to fight culture wars. Well, guess what? You got a real war in your hand now. You got one now. So let's see how all of these people who, in the ultimate irony, are the ultimate version of DEI, didn't earn it, weren't qualified to be it. That's Kane. That's the freaking Secretary of Defense. I can go down the line. They were not supposed to be there, but here they are. So, okay, mediocrity to its finest. Go win a war.
Bobby, we were talking about the fact that you were stationed at that base in Bahrain that got hit. Talk to us about what it's like on the ground there. Give us your thoughts, because you are in a position that so few people are, that you intimately know the ground
Yeah.
is being fought over.
So Bahrain, NSA Bahrain, it's in Manama. There, Jufar, if I'm going to say specifically the region of that city, is basically cut up into two major sections. There's like their version of the interstate that runs between it. And there's a little bridge that connects the two, right? So you have the one side, well, a lot of the administrative stuff is. You have your exchange, your food court and stuff like that. It's like a little mini city, right? Then when you cross that bridge to the other side, that's where ships will dock that come in, warships, um, and all the other ships that are there, and then the warehouses and all the support structure to help the operations. Um, these things uh, work they coincide with each other. They work there, and then you also, by the way, you also have housing for sailors, especially junior sailors that cannot go out in town, et cetera, et cetera. Because there's strict rules of who can live in town and who can't in Bahrain, because they want to make sure that they're very hospitable to their host. Right. The side that looked like it got hit was the warehouse side, the support side. Okay, which tells me two things. If what I'm seeing is right, the Iranians know where most of the people are, and that's the food court area and all that other side. So they didn't want to inflict necessarily mass casualties and have that on them, but they sure as hell wanted to hamper the operational side that comes out of Bahrain. Now, the other thing about this too, the actual headquarters for Fifth Fleet and United States Central Command for the Naval Forces, is on that same side where the food court and stuff is. They are in a nice reinforced building, but they're probably down to only essential personnel to have these operations go.
Mm.
They apparently probably are still intact. At least that's what I'm hoping. But I tell you right now, the thing that I'm concerned about is what actually, if anything, got hit and taken out there, because Bahrain also is a major logistics hub too. So if this thing continues to escalate, do soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, do they come through Bahrain via the sea? What ships are going to have to pull back in to restock, because now they're going to stay out there and be operational. You take out a major spoke. Along the same lines with Al Udeid in Qatar, Doha, I know that area very well too, where we fought the war for Afghanistan and Iraq from there. And when it came to air combat command and all of that, the fact that they're dealing with all these missiles trying to hit them because air is the fastest way to strike back, and they have had intercept after intercept after intercept this morning because they're trying to disrupt their operations. We have a very robust air defense system there. I should know because one people had to go help put it together and test it. But at the same time, the fact that you have these missiles coming in, it's hard for real aircraft to take off and do certain things. So just keep all of that in mind as you keep hearing these things. From a warfare perspective, there's this saying, amateurs think tactics, professionals think logistics.
Mm,
Bahrain and Doha are the major logistical hubs, one for the air side, one for the Navy side. And that's why you're going to continue to see missile strikes against them. Okay. So that's what my thought process is. Iran is acting like, hey, we're getting ready for a long conflict.
mhm.
The United States is acting like we need headlines. And that's a mismatch of strategy, which is why I'm asking the fundamental question: what is the end state? They teach you this. Heck, my first days at Annapolis, they taught you, hey, when you go to war, you better know what the end looks like. Right. And we forgot that going into Afghanistan and Iraq. But you better believe, as I became a more senior officer and we saw it unveiled in Afghanistan and Iraq, that they hammer this to officers when it comes to your planning. What do the final stages of war look like? And apparently, as we fire people left and right because of the wrong skin tone or the wrong gender, right? We're forgetting that institutional knowledge of what does the end state look like. The same thing that Schwarzkopf and Powell said in the Desert Storm War, we just completely forgotten.
If you are just joining us, I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. I have Bobby Jones, who is a retired Navy commander. He hosts Anchor Watch for us. He is an expert on Middle East affairs. We couldn't ask for anyone better to walk us through what just happened with the U.S. and Iran I'm sorry, the U.S. and Israel bombing Iran, and the president issuing an 8-minute statement on social media, talking about that this is a major combat operation. He expects there very well may be U.S. casualties, uh, calling for regime change, but leaving that on the Iranians themselves to, make that determination. I can't help but think we started out this year, Bobby, talking with you about the operation in Venezuela where they removed the president, Nicolas Maduro, uh,
Mhm.
took him out of the country, and then just installed his second in command to run everything, while saying that the U.S. is still in charge. Um, do you think that we may be looking for or that as a model, or is this perhaps just going to be a repeat where we go in, we break stuff, and then leave the Iranian people hanging?
Well, that's what's to be determined because President Trump has come out and said, Iranians rise up and take over your country. O Okay, what does that look like? Who do you have pegged to be that person, to be that leader? This is way more complicated than Venezuela because of the fact you have a civilian or a conventional type government, and then you have the religious leader in the Ayatollah, and you have his forces, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, as opposed to just the Iranian military and the Iranian president, blah, blah. So you got two sides that you have to deal with. So when you say remove someone, Susan, are we removing the Ayatollah? Are we removing the prime minister president? Are we removing who is removed and what gives the move legitimacy? I haven't heard anything. Someone in the chat basically is like, where was this speech posted? Social media. That leads to another point that leads back to this point. The fact is, when you take action like this, you're supposed to address a nation, right? Historically speaking, it's addressed from the Oval Office, so you understand the seriousness of it, and you lay out what the objectives are and the end state. Okay, none of that has happened. None of it. And because of that, we, the American people, who are the ones that provide our sons and daughters for these forces, have no idea what the hell is going on. And so let's say, hey, removal of the current regime, what does that mean? Right? If you remove the diplomatic side or the regular government side, rather, okay, what happens with the Ayatollah? Who still runs the country? The Ayatollah runs the country. All right, is he going to be forced to flee? There were times where they thought he was going to flee to Russia, this, that, and the other. Okay, if he does, who fills the power vacuum?
Mhm.
Who? What is the plan? And this is what's blowing my mind. There is no secondary thoughts on this. It is the immediate reaction because let's be kind of honest and blunt. Netanyahu has convinced Trump this is the action he needs to take for multiple political reasons. But he is not looking at the reality and the fallout and the long-term commitment these strikes may have started. Okay. Yep. State media is still talking about the school that was struck. We're losing this right now on the public relations standpoint because we don't know why we did it.
Mhm.
Based on the fact you said this was annihilated with Operation Midnight Hammer, and now it's Epic Fury. What the hell are we doing? What?
It seems like
I'm sorry, I'm frustrated. It's just
it seems like they've spent more time thinking of cool names for these
of the
operations,
names, of the
right,
names.
than
That's it.
actually the strategy and the tactics and the end goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I not only do I agree with you, I think that somehow in Trump's mind or whoever's around him handling him, they believe that the sheer volume of the shock and awe will be enough. Well, number one, you did this in the early mornings here, but in the daytime there, so it doesn't even look nearly as cool. You're not getting the visuals that you think you want. But number two, understand the video that is coming out of places that have hosted American forces for decades looks bad when they're running around like, oh my God, what the heck? Da, 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 da. I mean, Bahrain looks like chaos because they don't know when the next strike is coming. They don't know if the air defense systems are going to work. They don't know. And obvious, if you were able to hit a base, that means anybody else is subject to being hit. I um I think if you're talking about public relations, they've lost. If you're thinking about strategic value, they've lost. If you're thinking about overall policy, they've lost because none of that's been defined and none of us know what winning looks like. And now, the IRG has announced that they're going to attack everything in America that's American in the region. Flat out said it. They got nothing to lose. And understand this, people, when you're dealing with the force that is willing to die, happily die, to kill you, there's an element here that means all things are on the table. There's no self-preservation in their mind. And that's the difference between the Iranian regular forces and the Revolutionary Guard. Those guys will do whatever.
You were talking about how, Trump appears to have been convinced by Netanyahu to bomb Iran again because this can be a solution to some of his political problems. As you mentioned before, we just had Bill and Hillary Clinton testify before Congress behind closed doors in relation to the Epstein files. Um, the Trump administration has not released all the files. They've not followed the law of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. There have been reports leading up to this that Iran has been threatening to release files from the Epstein files that had never been seen before. What do you make of that as a dimension here? Was that just bluster? Is it possible that they do have some of these files, and could that become a factor in this unfolding war?
I think that's a very, very valid, nuanced point you bring up, Susan. First of all, I never put anything past anything in the cyberspace.
Mm,
We have consistently been surprised and in some cases shocked at how infiltrated American systems have been
mm.
via cyber over the last decade, right? And a lot of it has been from Iran. So, do I think it's possible? I think it's very possible. Is it true? I have no idea. I do know that anytime a president goes to war, typically there's a spike in popularity of that president.
Right.
If you look historically, going back to World War II, even back to Vietnam initially, right? But you can definitely look at both Bushes when they went to war, this, that, and the other. There's this initial bump. Now, when you sit there and you watch Trump, who was getting on Marine One yesterday to head down to Mar-a-Lago because why stay in D.C. when you're starting a war? He talked about how he didn't like the fact that Clinton had been brought in. Well, he probably didn't like the fact because he knows Clinton knows everything that he was doing. Okay.
Right, it's
And
a bad precedent for him, for a president to be holding
exactly.
Congress.
I was just about to say that. The fact that he went as a former president set the precedence now saying, hey, you got to come in and give a disposition. You've got to sit down and do it. So I don't think that is coincidence. We do this less than 24 hours after that. I think those are connected because if you look at it, you had American forces that have been in that area for over a week doing what we call circles in the water, waiting, right? That hits. You got the Democrats that came out and said, we demand Trump come and give his disposition. You got the Clintons that did it. You need to come and do it,
Right.
right? And the same thing out of his mouth, I've been exonerated, blah, 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 da, 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 right? But he honestly knows he needs some distraction because all the news, his State of the Union address, which he thought was great, which was made for TV, the longest ever, fell flat.
Mhm.
Flat in the fallout. So he's got that. Then he's had the depositions of the Clintons. He needs something to change the narrative. And unfortunately, he's willing to put American lives at risk, but it follows his own mindset of it's never, ever, ever going to be about other people. It's going to be about him. So if that means Americans have to die to change the narrative, so be it. So be it.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm sorry, I just can't. I can't. He's supposed to protect American lives. He wanted the Democrats to stand up and say, protect American lives abroad in the State of the Union.
Mhm.
And then less than freaking a week later, starts a war
Right.
with the Iranians as you try to negotiate. So, yeah.
And we should also note that there was bombshell reporting from NPR, confirmed by many other outlets like MS Now, about documents that were removed related to
Hmm.
allegations against the president himself,
Yep.
with a 13-year-old girl, allegations of sexual assault and
Yep.
battery. They have not been
Yep.
substantiated, but those documents were out there and they were removed by his Department of Justice.
Yep.
That is a huge story, and to my knowledge, no reporter has asked him about that at this point, and
Right.
now with bombing Iran, the likelihood of him being asked of that goes down, right, Bobby?
Exactly. Exactly. It pushes it to the back table. I find it interesting that it's NPR. I'm glad you highlighted it's NPR, National Public Radio, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the one that they gutted, who now get no government funding because of what happened with the big beautiful bill. Great. Now the shackles are off of them. They are fearless about going and getting stories now. They don't have to worry about the political fallout, and I love it. The tone is different because they're saying the stuff, to be completely honest, that all the other major media outlets can't do. Whether it's Paramount because of their little merger, everybody don't want to piss off the president. NPR doesn't have that problem. PBS no longer has that problem, and it's them and independent media like you and everybody else that are able to drive in on this. That is a significant story, and I did a double take when I saw it. I was like, "Are you serious?" That comes in coincides with the pictures like Ludnick and all these guys that they originally removed as well,
Mhm.
right? That they have to put back. So you can't even trust what they're releasing. Here's the thing. If Iran has infiltrated and gotten the files, you better believe they want to bomb the hell out of them now. Because if they release that stuff, I, everything crumbles. Trump's defense, all of it crumbles. So yeah, there probably is something that's linked to this. But when you look and see just how deep and connected the Epstein files are all over the world,
Right.
none of us are going to be shocked by this. I mean, we're going to be shocked at the depravity, yes, but there's no way I'm going to be shocked and be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Well, I mean, this is what happened. And I don't think it's a coincidence when you look at the allegations of what Epstein, who he was connected to, going on back to Israel, this, that, and the other. All of this is starting to unravel. And the fallout is we are now going to war to try to push it to the back pages, but it refused to die. It refuses to die. And so now we may be going into a quagmire. The BBC is showing all the different bases that are in the area that the United States has, all of which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, are in easily strike range of the Iranian short range and intermediate missile stockpile. All of them. All of them, and they have a ton of them. And it's much harder to knock down a missile once it's shot than to stop it from launching. So it's like trying to hit a bullet with another bullet thousands of feet in the air to intercept these things. This is why this is a problem.
And Bobby, I should note, Raina in the chat pointed out that Roger Sullenberger, who is a former reporter from the Daily Beast, now an independent journalist, did some of the first reporting on those missing documents in
Mm.
the Epstein files. And that's a testament to the power of independent media that you and us at Lincoln Square and everyone else are trying to do. That's why, we dragged you out of bed on a
Ah,
Saturday morning
I was
because
up.
people wanna hear, um, from you as an expert what's going on. You talked about Trump's State of the Union, which was only a few days ago, feels like a couple years at this point. One of his big talking points was on gas prices. He keeps lying that gas prices are under $2 a gallon. I can
Yeah.
tell you they're certainly not. I just filled up at the pump. Here in Michigan, prices are over $3. I know elsewhere there are gas prices over $5. Now that we are once again threatening the Straits of Hormuz, where you have been, talk to us about how this might affect people very intimately in their pocketbooks with gas prices.
Yes. Yes. It's going to hit you hard. There's going to be a ripple effect. Now, the question is, how fast does that happen and how intense will it be? Right. So understand the same countries that are under fire because they are hosting American forces make up the majority of OPEC. OPEC is that collaboration of the Middle Eastern nations that set basically oil production prices and sets policy. Well, all of them are under attack right now. So they're feeling it personally. That means they could restrict oil production because they don't know how long a war is going to last. They're going to look out for themselves. All of these things have a ripple effect because they provide oil to over a quarter of the oil comes out of that area for the world. It will affect us because even if you sit there and say, well, we're energy independent, blah, 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 okay, but we have to absorb that loss. We have to go into our strategic reserves. There is a trickle down effect. It will affect you in your pocketbook. Okay. Straight up, because no matter what people say, the oil companies that we have domestically in the United States are not going to just absorb the loss and absorb that price. Trump said that with the tariffs, that the businesses should absorb the tariffs for the consumer. On what business model have you ever seen that happen in a
Right.
capitalist society, to include Trump? So we're going to feel some of this, right? And what's going to happen is they are going to see the American people get more pissed because all it does is contribute to the affordability crisis. You already had it going on with food and this, that, and the other. Now you're going to have it with gas, which all of us need, every day. Even me as someone who owns an electric vehicle,
Right.
I can feel the pieces of this falling. So the nightmare scenario is that Iran mines the straits, meaning they put actual floating mines,
Mm,
bombs, the contact bombs, all sorts of bombs in the strait, and we don't know where they are, and ships try to navigate it and they blow up. Then it shuts down everything. That is the nightmare scenario. That is one of the things I had to worry about in my job back in the day. And when you do that, you put the entire world on hold. And depending on how serious the regime in Iran feels that their power is threatened, the IRGCN will lay those mines out there and they will be unmarked, and we'll have to sit there and try to map it, and things could go sideways. The United States, to show you what I mean by not understanding the details of logistics, we no longer have the amount of minesweepers and mine hunting ships that we had 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We have to actually coordinate with our allies who have those assets if that scenario is to happen. That's significant because it's a time issue. And so we're going over here, John Wayne in it, cowboying up, not realizing that, hey, if something goes sideways and they mine the straits, we got to go ask other countries like France, can we borrow your minesweepers, your mine clearances? It's insane. It's insane. And no one has really talked through this, but that's why I think General Kane was like, understand, you don't want to do this, and here's why.
Bobby, I can't help but think of the fact that Trump repeatedly promised on the campaign trail that he'd be the president of no new wars. A lot of people believed him. Perhaps, people who are making, young people who are making the decision, should I go ahead and enlist? Should I join the National Guard because this is my only way to get my college tuition paid for?
Right.
People who may have really taken the president at his word, and now many of them have been shipped off to the Middle East. Some of them may die.
Mm,
Talk to us about that because this was a choice that you made to enlist. You
mhm.
chose to put your life on the line for our country. But a lot of people felt that voting for Trump was a vote against war.
Right. It's really the ultimate betrayal in a lot of respects because this is a war that we picked, not one that we were targeted in. And understand people, don't get me wrong, most people do sign up for the military because there's some part of them that is, patriotic, altruistic. Is like, hey, we want to do something that's greater than ourselves. A lot of people do. But also understand that when you have leadership that has gone out their way to tell you, hey, we thought these wars were bad and stupid. We're not going to do that. And that, like, they're the smartest people in the room. That kind of makes it okay. Well, I can serve my time and do what I have to do, and then you know rotate out. Unfortunately, that is not how it works. What's the saying that wars are started by old men, and then they send young people to fight them? It's true. It's true. And so when you have elections, when I look at the presidential elections, I look at like, okay, well, there are very few things that the Constitution says the president's supposed to be, but the first thing they say is commander in chief. Do they have the capability to do that? Young people now are joining the military, and they bragged about this in the State of the Union. I was like, really? Talking about, oh, we got record recruitment. Well, that typically happens when the economy is shit,
Mm,
right? It is the thing that they do. They go and enlist because there are no jobs that are available for them. And so now you have a group of people, and you can look at survey after survey. This young generation feels like they can't buy a house, they can't do this, they can't do that. So yeah, a lot of them will serve in the military, and you're going to sit there and claim that it's your record recruitment. Well, that started before you with Biden, but now all of a sudden you have a president that is lying to people, saying that, hey, we're not going to start any new wars. We've had more strikes in the first year with Trump. When you think about it, not just, around Syria. I go down the list, Venezuela, in the first year than Biden basically did his entire term when you
right.
think about it, right? And so if you are someone who wants to serve in the military, understand this. This administration sees you as a political instrument, not a last resort. Okay, which means you are going to be whimmed, to whatever he feels like that morning when he wakes up. That's the reality because there's no strategic thought. It took him forever to put out the strategic guidance, the National Defense Plan, and all this kind of stuff. And all it talked about was like America's great. We, I.
Right.
No real alliances discussed, none of that. And that should be your red flag.
Yeah.
So anybody who's thinking about enlisting, I'm not going to talk you out of it, but I will say talk to those of us who serve and get the various opinions of people because we've seen this. But this is next level. And mind you, none of his sons, none of his daughters are putting on the uniform.
Bobby, I was so struck by one aspect of Trump's speech at Fort Bragg a few weeks ago, where he just explicitly told the troops there that they have to vote Republican, which
Yep.
is breaking another one of those great traditions of not politicizing the military. I feel like that is another aspect we gotta talk about in terms of his approach to the military and just seeing everybody being in service to him personally and his politics.
Yeah. That he views everybody that's around. The reason he loves the presidency so much, it's obvious that he believes that because he's in that position, everybody's his servant.
Mhm.
Which is ass backwards. He is everybody's servant. That's the way it works. That's the job. That's how it's supposed to work. He does not see it. The reason that these people who've been in that office age so fast is because Think of it like this. You are a bucket and you're pouring into 300 million glasses if you do it right. And very rarely will they pour back into you as a bucket to refill you. You're not. That's the job. I'm sorry. It may be ego that drives you to it, but when you're in the seat and you realize you're responsible for millions of lives, it's a taxing thing, right? So, that being said, Trump has never had that philosophy. Never had that philosophy. He honestly believes that, hey, everybody is supposed to cater to him. He looks at America as the ultimate concierge service. Whatever he needs, they're supposed to provide him.
But
America's provided him billions. They've provided him a platform. They provided him security. They've provided him prestige. It's what we have given him. But what has he given us?
right, right,
That's that simple. And if you want to be the head of the military and you're talking to people at Fort Bragg, right? You're not supposed to talk about elections and you and your party and blah, 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 blah. You're supposed to say the reason we have free elections is because of your service.
right.
That's what you're supposed to hammer. But, you know, whatever. He wouldn't know. He wouldn't know. So,
Well, let's talk about the upcoming midterm elections, which Donald Trump is clearly terrified about. He's
mhm,
trying to get Congress to pass the SAVE Act, which would make it so that you have to present your papers, your birth certificate, or your passport just to register to vote.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
he let's talk a little bit more. He authorized a raid on the Fulton County, Georgia Elections Board, which I know is
yep,
not
my hometown.
right.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and now, he posted just hours after bombing Iran that he is accusing them of intervening in two elections, and that is a reason for
Mhm,
him to bomb there.
mhm, mhm.
Could we see him using an ongoing war with Iran to justify extraordinary powers to intervene or even try and stop our elections?
Um, I leave everything on the table with him because this midterm election is literally about his political and maybe personal survival. What I mean by that is if the House flips, he knows he's a lame duck president. There ain't gonna be a damn thing, and we pretty much know that's going to happen regardless of these efforts. But if the Senate flips, which is now possible based on these polls that we're seeing, we're talking about impeachment on the table. We're talking about open to prosecution on the table. We're talking about, hey, auditing and taking money from him that was deemed illegal and unethical. We're talking about the emoluments clause being actually enforced. We're talking about Armageddon to the Trump empire. That being said, everything's on the table because of it. Everything to include, like you said, to have a passport. Let me ask you a question. How many people do you know have passports, American citizens, unless you travel abroad? So you have what you call a social-economic divide right there. If
Right.
the driver's license ain't good enough, then this, that, and the other. There are so many nuanced things to the SAVE Act that target certain people, certain people. And I see a situation where he's raising all these issues. We talk about, illegal immigration because watch that ramp up right before the election. And then ICE will be sitting outside of a precinct to intimidate. To intimidate. He's going to use them as the Gestapo. We saw Minnesota as the test run. They're the Gestapo element of the fascist tendencies that we're seeing, right? Because they're operating with impunity. No one's checking them. Only people checking them on the courts, right? So all of everything that's happening, Iran, if we are in massive conflict with Iran, he'll say something stupid like, I can see it now. Well, maybe we need to postpone, even though we didn't do it in World War II. Or, I don't know if you can trust this, that, and the other. The fact that they're going after mail-in ballots when the same people you put in harm's way vote, like I did, via the mail-in ballot, because we were fighting a damn war. Now all of a sudden they don't count. They can't be postmarked. They have to be received. Do you know how hard it is to get mail off of a ship to get to where it's going? I do because I had to track it. So all of this stuff is part of a collaboration to keep the majority in the Congress. He knows it. I know it. We all know it. Now, here's a question that the American people got to ask themselves. Will you allow him to get away with this? He has lied to you at every turn. You have people that were hardcore MAGA who are now backing off. You have people that are losing farms, houses, affordability. How now we're going to war. Now your young people are going to go fight something that he promised not to get into. He promised to stop the Ukraine war day one. All of these promises. Ladies and gentlemen, at what point do you use the word accountability with this administration? Across the board, across the board. And to me, now that we have a kinetic war going on, all bets should be off because I'm telling you now, if it becomes something that's long and drawn out and they proactively recruit you or even think about talking about a draft and it's your kid,
That's
we
amazing.
set ourselves up. So that's just
Right.
that's my thought on that.
Uh, for all of you at home, if you're just joining us, I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. I have Bobby Jones, a retired Navy commander who hosts Anchor Watch for us. He has been in the Middle East in the very places that have now been bombed. Uh, we all woke up to hearing that from President Trump, who posted on Truth Social, his own social media network, not giving us an address from the Oval Office. He announced that U.S. and Israel had bombed Iran, and this is a major combat operation. He has warned that there could be U.S. casualties. We're talking with Bobby to get his expertise as somebody who has served, who has led troops in that region. Bobby, I'm wondering, could you give us a history of what has gone on in Iran since the revolution, since 1979?
Mm.
How have we gotten to the point where we're at now?
Wow. Let me give you
And
the Reader's Digest version.
easy
Yeah.
question.
So basically, when the Shah was removed and the Islamic revolution happened in '79, we had the U.S. hostages. The embassy was overran, right? And for I want to say it was 400 plus days that these hostages were there, and Jimmy Carter, as his last act as president, fought tooth and nail to get them released. He tried a rescue mission and it failed miserably, and but he relied on diplomacy. And then the election of '80 happened, and Reagan, allegedly had backdoor channels telling Iran to not release those hostages before the election, and literally they released the minute Reagan took the oath. All of a sudden, the Iranian hostages, the U.S. hostages in Iran were released because he understood history and this, that, and the other. That was just the tip of the iceberg, though. Then you had real naval conflict in the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, depending on which one you want to call it, and that switches too. That's political,
Mhm.
right? Where you had a mine hit a U.S. warship, Stark, and that led to an absolute all-out naval conflict with the first time with cruise missiles and the new, you know, um, technological age of naval warfare, where you had multiple ships sunk in the Gulf, U.S. Navy ships hit, and it really started to focus the foreign policy. Okay, the United States now gives a damn about the Middle East in a great deal, and we're going to pivot toward making sure that we keep that in check. That naval war really started to translate into ground war when Iraq invaded Kuwait, right? And so Iran, though, and this is the piece, Iran and Iraq were at war, Saddam Hussein, et cetera, et cetera. And the United States originally backed Saddam Hussein because they were going against Iran. To show you how complex all of this was, you can Google the video of then Secretary of Defense his first time around, Donald Rumsfeld, going to Iraq and shaking the hands of Saddam Hussein and making sure he has the weapons necessary to beat Iran. That's
Right.
how much the United States wanted to beat Iran, that we were in bed with Saddam Hussein. Okay. That being said, Saddam invades Kuwait. We get him out of Kuwait in Desert Storm, Desert Shield, whatever. But Iran was a thorn in the side because of their cells, their sleeper cells being activated. All right. And so we started to see this pattern. We fast forward to 9/11, where yes, Afghanistan became the central idea, but understand the terrorism was like a franchise, like a McDonald's opening up on your street corner. So Iran is doing this, Afghanistan and the Taliban are doing that. The United States is dealing with all of this all over the world and its allies, to the point where the intersection of those philosophies started to happen. You see it in Syria, you see it in Lebanon, you see all of these franchise terrorist cells basically popping up because they're all sponsored by Iran. Because Iran realized one thing, that it's much easier to attack from the shadows and hit value points without directly confronting the United States military. So the USS Cole, for example, in 2000, all of these things that were created to make it hard, asymmetric warfare in a lot of respects, for us to respond. Now, don't get me wrong, the United States ramped up a lot of those capabilities after 9/11. And we shaped and structured ourselves to deal with these independent franchisees of terrorism, is the way I look at it. Now, that being said, you still have to worry about the actual government, and you have two halves of it. You have the traditional and then the religious side of it.
Mhm.
And the United States has had a very hard time dealing with both of those. Obama comes into the White House and I was like, hey, we're going to try to negotiate with these people in good earnest faith. Right. And believe me, I remember it was a thawing out that had to happen. And then the next thing you know, some proxy meetings happen. And then Secretary Kerry is there and all this. And you saw the world slowly come into the negotiations because people thought there was a possibility a deal could be struck. And
Mhm.
then it was struck. And the world kind of looked at each other like, damn, did that just happen? You know what I'm saying? We were all shocked. In comes Trump in 2017. And he lights a fire to all of that. The climate accords, the nuclear deal, all of these things that the world, it was almost like for a brief second, the world understood that we're all in this together.
Mhm.
And he came in and just tipped over the apple cart and said no. And we have been scrambling ever since Biden comes into office, COVID and all this other kind of stuff. The world's dealing with the pandemic. And you never really got the sense that they could get back on that path because of the damage that Trump did. And when Trump announced he was running for reelection, it made it kind of like all bets were off. Meanwhile, Ukraine and Russia are kicking off. And that
Oh,
destabilizes things further. And then Trump says he can fix all of it. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are. We have no nuclear deal. We're now in an active kinetic war, United States and Israel with freaking Iran. Ukraine and Russia have just passed the 4-year anniversary mark. Your economy is trash, 2 syllables, trash, right? When it comes to actually living day to day. And on top of that, we have possibly the most sickening cover up in international world history when it comes to the Epstein files and how many people it affects. And the number one culprit may be the person sitting, well, he's at Mar-a-Lago now, but supposed to be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's my summary on how we're here, right? And how it directly impacts this. So any distraction that he can come up with seems to be something that he's willing to do.
yeah. So there have been mass protests in Iran. There have been a lot of people who have been killed because, Iranians have not been pleased with their government. And this is not the first time. There have been green shoots of protest. Periodically, we did have the Arab Spring last decade
Yep.
across the Middle East. Um, that seems to be, some cover for the Trump administration.
Hmm.
We're here
Hmm.
to aid the Iranian people. Talk to us, Bobby. What are their concerns? What is it that you see the Iranian people want here? And let's talk about what kind of partner Donald Trump is in their struggle.
I I think you're talking about something that is grotesquely underreported. If you look at Iran before the revolution, you would think it was maybe an island or something that was westernized, just like going to Hawaii or something. I mean, blue jeans, women walking without anything covering their head, um, great universities, because historically speaking, that whole thought process started there in a lot of respects. It was unbelievable. And then the revolution happened. And here's the thing. Iran, in my opinion, the regime made the strategic mistake of allowing the internet to be as accessible as it was.
Mm,
You have a whole generation of young people who see what the rest of the world is and they want that. You have that original generation that was that revolutionary generation that saw and remember what it was like before. And you have a combination of these things happening. Now, there have been various uprisings over the course of the decades when it comes to Iran. But the thing that really blows my mind is the West has never really jumped in to back them
Mhm,
when that happened. And part of it is because of the oil, and part of it is because of the sleeper cells. And part of it is people need to understand in the Middle East, Iran is the big dog on the block. They have the largest military, they're the largest country, all of this stuff. And it's like if you had to deal with Nigeria in Africa or China in Asia or Brazil in South America. These are the massive, you know, hegemony like influencers of the continent. And that is the case with the Middle East and Iran. So no Western nation has wanted to proactively sit there and say, we need to go all in. Trump comes off and says, we're going to go all in. I was like, okay,
mhm,
right? For whatever reason. Now, what's interesting to me is I don't know if that's because of Netanyahu's influence on him, or is it just something where the ego's like, yeah, we're going to back him, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to be able to say, America helped freed you, whatever, what have you. But when you go out and say these things publicly and you're telling the Iranian people, go protest,
mhm.
right? And they expect the backing. And the first time it happened here recently, there was really no backing. They were just protesting and they got smacked, right? Now you have actually dropped ordnance. You have
Mhm,
shot missiles at again. What's going to happen now? The American people, unfortunately, don't even understand really what's going on in Iran, right? It's always been something that the policymakers understood, going back, to Carter, this, that, and the other. This is why the address from an Oval Office would have made sense because you need to explain why the hell we're even talking about doing this kind of what you're asking. But I don't know what this looks like moving forward. Let's take Trump at face value. Let's say he really does give a damn about the liberation of Iran. Okay. What are we committing to make that happen? Because
mhm,
that's the question that the protesters should be asking. Who steps into the power vacuum? Number two, that you could have someone way worse step into that power vacuum than what you're dealing with now,
mhm.
right? If the Ayatollah flees and let's say they transfer that title, I don't know, it could happen, and they have someone younger, more radical than him that takes that role. What now? What now? These are the things that I don't understand, and I don't know if they've even asked the question. So, but the history is complex, but the future now is way more murkier than the past because we don't know what we're going to be dealing with and who's going to be in charge.
Now there has been, a robust, if not underground, women's movement, for years
Hmm.
around
Hmm.
because women have paid a tremendous price. As you mentioned, before the revolution, I mean, women were highly educated in Iran, and we've probably all seen the pictures of them in mini
Hmm.
skirts and blue
Hmm.
jeans, and there was a
Hmm.
long tradition there. Now, of course, with a fundamentalist government. Women are fully second class citizens. There are many women who have been fighting for their liberation. Forgive me for being cynical as a woman in the
Hmm.
United States who has watched this president orchestrate the destruction of Roe v. Wade with his appointments on the Supreme Court, who calls female reporters piggy. Forgive
Yep.
me for thinking that he may not be the best ally to Iranian feminists.
Well, like James Baldwin said famously, you tell me America's not racist, but here are the facts as I see them and I present them to you. Same situation. He can sit there and say, we're going to do this and the other. But heck, man, under his administration, women have less rights now than they did before he came in the second
Right.
term.
My
What
daughter,
ma-
who is 23 years old, has less rights now than I did at age 23.
Exactly the point. Exactly the point. And so now you got to ask yourself this fundamental question. What would he push for in the regime change? Who's the type of leader that the United States will back? Because hopefully they have a Rolodex of who they would ideally want to see fill that role, right?
Mhm.
Are they going to be someone that's about women's rights? Are they going to be someone about dealing with minority rights because of the religious makeup of things in that country? There are so many questions that they have to answer that they cannot answer here in the United States.
Right.
Let me be very clear. We have the same questions here when they talk about DEI and anti-woke and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, Hegseth saying, hey, military officers, you're not going to these elite schools. The same schools that would educate you on what the hell is going on in the area that we're talking about,
The same schools
right?
he went to.
That he
That's
went
his
to.
Ivy League.
Princeton undergrad and Harvard graduate school. So we literally we literally are dealing with the height of hypocrisy. But the only difference now is, Susan, people's lives are directly on the line. History is being determined. I'm not trying to overstate anything with these strikes because we've had strikes before, blah, blah, blah. But this is the first time where you can point the video since what the 80s, where you can say American forces are now under direct attack, and you caused this because you struck first.
Uh, Walk us through, and I know this is another big question, Bobby, but that's what we lean on you for.
Mm,
Walk us through the bigger dynamics in the Middle East, the alliances, the
right.
conflicts between Sunnis and Shiites, because this is not just us bombing Iran. We have set off a chain reaction.
Yeah. So I mean, part of part of the issue that we have with the Middle East goes back to the fallout of World War One. If you are bored and want to learn the book Paris 1919, y'all, if you want to understand how the world works today, that book is by far the best in showing how the victors, quote unquote, of World War One carved up the world, right? And when they carved up the world, specifically in Africa and the Middle East, they literally look at those borders on a map. Look how straight those lines are.
Mhm.
No accountability for ethnic or tribal or traditional historic affiliations of people. None. None. Okay. And so with these straight lines that you see and the evolution after World War II of these borders, I tell people I look at the Middle East in two separate categories. I look at the Middle East as far as countries and nations as defined as we typically look at them, but then ethnicities slash religions in that area, right? So when you look at Iraq, the main groups you had the Sunnis, the Shia, and the Kurds, right? You had minority rule of one over the other, and then one that was just basically bastardized and treated like nobody. But then in another part, say, for example, the Kurds are treated better because they're the majority here. All of these things require subject matter expertise, people who have been to the region and study the region religiously. And what is the first thing that the Trump administration does when they come into power the second time? They kill like a ton of those positions. They fire a ton of those people. They remove a ton of those people who right now can give you real assessment on what these results of these strikes are going to do. Now, that being said, the Middle East over time reshuffled and kingdoms came, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, but you still had, what's going on with Israel and Gaza and the establishment of that state in 48 being the ripple effect move. And by the way, thanks to the UK for starting that, not the United States, Balfour Declaration, all of that, right? But historically speaking, the United States has always been able to try to walk this tightrope between alliances individually one on one, and then every now and then trying to coordinate amongst their various allies in the region. So, for example, United States has an alliance with Jordan and
Mhm.
their king, who's great, and their queen there. But at the same time, they may or may not work in alliance with Saudi Arabia and Jordan at the same time. Because each one of these things, each one of these nations has different requirements and different political end states that they want. So, for example, I'd go to the UAE and Bahrain. Those are the two areas I basically live the most in. All
Mhm.
right. UAE has a different relationship with Israel. Hell, they struck a trade deal with Israel.
Right.
They have tried to normalize relations, right? And because of that, the UAE is like, hey, do not have any strikes against Iran coming from here because they understand the political sensitivity. So these little things affect your strategy when conducting these strikes. The Kingdom of Bahrain, which people need to understand, that's a kingdom, has historically been the headquarters for Fifth Fleet for decades. Hey, they understand that they put themselves in harm's way for our protection. And today it came back to bite them in the ass, right? And so all of this, um, the fallout from, colonization, 1919, and now the 80s and now here creates this level of complexity in that region that nowhere else in the world has. And I say that not because of just the people and the governments, because you have a lot of that in Africa too. But the resource of oil is
Right.
the world is so addicted to it. They have yet to figure that out for Africa yet. They're going to, and it's going to make the Middle East look like a church picnic. Trust me. But those two areas, the Middle East and Africa, the world is still yet to wrap their minds around, and they don't understand the complexity and the mistakes of the past and how it's going to haunt them moving to the future. So that's why this is all jacked up.
If you're just joining us, I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. I'm joined by Bobby Jones, retired Navy commander, host of Anchor Watch right here, who has served many, many years in the Middle East, in Bahrain, in the UAE, knows this region intimately, and has been so generous with his time to tell us what's going on. Bobby, I know we are about 90 minutes into this. Could you just let us know, let the people who are just joining us, what do we know, what do we don't know about the strikes that the U.S. and Israel just launched in Iran?
So, number one, this is why I have coffee. I knew this was going to be a a barn burner. But what we know is this: United States and Israel, at minimum, I see 3 confirmed target areas in Iran that the United States and Israel hit in retaliation. Um, Iran has basically hit what I call a shotgun approach to retaliate. They have hit multiple, they have attempted, this keyword, attempted to hit multiple bases across the Middle East where American service members are stationed. That includes Erbil, Iraq, the air base there. That includes um, Doha, where Al Udeid Air Force Base is. That includes Bahrain, the headquarters of United States Fifth Fleet. Bahrain was hit. We have the video. We see the smoke plumes that are still rising from there. We see the multiple intercepts at Al Udeid that are knocking down continuous missiles. Understand, and I need people to understand this strategically when we talk about these weapons. These short range and intermediate ballistic missiles. What do we mean by ballistic? Let's just break this down. When you throw a baseball, it's baseball season, the Braves are in season, spring training. When you throw a baseball, it takes an arc. That is a ballistic path, right? It's very easy to just launch one of those and throw one of those, right? But it's very hard, just like when you're playing high speed softball or baseball even, to hit one of those things, especially if you're throwing another baseball trying to hit it, right? That's what the air defense systems around the world really are trying to do. Iran has a lot of baseballs, a ton of baseballs. And we only have so many baseballs that we can throw at these things. And so what they're trying to do is defeat the systems that defend these bases, which is why the president and Secretary of Defense evacuated a lot of those American bases. This is one of the reasons I knew we were going to go to war. You move forces into the area and then you evacuate those at bases at the same time. It's a combination of expect something. And so Iran has done that. They have tried to hit these places. And like I said, Bahrain got hit. Fifth Fleet got hit, that area. The specific place on base looked like it's more of the operational warehouse side, vice where the staff and everybody would be, because it's kind of like 2 major sections to the base. But that being said, United States has been attacked in retaliation to attacks that Israel and Iran had. And this is after them telling us when Operation Midnight Hammer happened that we had obliterated their nuclear program. Now it's not about the nuclear program. It's about the missile stockpiles that they have that keeps everybody under threat. Whatever the reason is today, I don't know. But that's what's happening. And now you have 2 carrier strike groups, in the region, and possibly a third heading there. and you are in an active war now. Ships are at general quarters, which, in movies they say battle stations, stuff like that, because now all bets are off. And by the way, China and Russia are in the Gulf too. They were doing military exercises. You
Right.
know, it's just it's insane. It's insane because we picked this. We started this. And I remember President Trump saying we're not getting into more stupid wars. So that's where we are.
And Bobby, you and I were just talking last June when the U.S. struck 3 nuclear facilities.
Hmm.
I'm sure that you recall this from the United States, where they
Yep.
said Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated, and
Yep.
suggestions otherwise are fake news. What are we doing
Yep.
here?
Well, I can tell you what we're doing here. We either they lied then or they're lying now. But somewhere someone is lying, because you cannot have it both ways. Are you telling me we obliterated something only to go back and kick it while it's dead
Hmm.
and subjecting our American forces to retaliation and armed conflict? I mean, just make it make sense to me as someone. Forget the fact that I served 20 something years and did all this. I'm just an American citizen going off of your statements. Justify it to me. They will not be able to. They will not be able to. We have been 2 weeks away or a week away from Iran having a nuclear weapon for 30 years, according to Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right.
Go on YouTube, y'all, and look up the videos. They have them now in chronological order.
Yep.
It's the same thing. You just see his hair getting whiter and him getting a little stockier. It's the
Yep.
same thing. And now Trump is bought into it, right? Bought into it, and he's cool, and he apparently is cool with this. And the fact that that man had the nerve and audacity to say, "Hey, there may be American casualties," after promising we wouldn't be doing that. The American people should call their Congress members and tell them, "You will hold him accountable for this."
And let's also say he did not get congressional approval,
Oh
authorization
no.
for this.
And that is the next question I have for you, Susan. Typically, even when it's an urgency strike, because time is of the essence, which this was not that, but let's go ahead and just play it for a second. Usually, the president, Bush did it, Obama did it, Clinton did it. They would get certain members of Congress together to inform Congress that
At
this
least
is happening.
get the gang of 8 together, and that did
Exactly.
not happen. And to
No,
your point, Trump isn't even in the White House as this major military strike is
yep.
going on. He
It's
is
in
not in the
Mar-a-Lago.
Situation Room. Right, he's in
Nope.
Mar-a-Lago.
Mm.
What did
He'll probably play around the golf this morning.
what message does that send to our allies that he is in his mansion in southern Florida instead of being in the Situation Room monitoring what is happening with our troops in harm's way?
It tells a very, it tells you two major things. He's not serious. And because he's not serious, we shouldn't get involved. That's what it shows. I'm just being real. Because again, when you talk about NATO, the only time Article 5 has been activated is when we got hit 9/11.
Right?
So we're the only country that's ever activated the Article 5 collective self-defense doctrine of the NATO Charter. That being said, you are literally going to go play golf this morning while one of your military bases got hit. Okay? Even Let's just back up. Even if you were down in Mar-a-Lago, you knew this was going to happen. You have the Joint Chiefs down there. You have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs down there with you. So you knew when you were going to do this. He's just not down there to hang out, right? Even and then this is what I would ask Caroline Levitt, what are y'all doing from a public relations standpoint? He should be in the PIOC, in the White House, deep underground to show that, hey, I take this serious. I take it serious. But nope, he can't be bothered to do that. And so let's see. Let's say Rubio called and texted Gang 8 last night right before him, and he's not addressing the nation per Reuters. You gotta be kidding me. Okay, so they sent a text to the Gang 8 saying we're striking Iran? Fair enough. No full briefing, and he's not going to address the nation about this. Come on, chat. Oh, my. Those of y'all in the chat, tell me right now on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the leadership of the United States to literally run this war that none of us asked for? Because I'm telling you right now, I'm at -12. I'm at -12. We just had a story, Susan, this past week of the U.S. military shooting down a Custom Border Patrol drone in Texas because they
Right.
can't coordinate airspace.
Friendly
And so,
fire right here.
I mean, and as someone who was responsible at one point in his career of airspace as an air defense commander, platform, etc., I'm like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
How does that happen? So, I cannot fathom what is happening there. The man said at the State of the Union, we're going to get so tired of winning. Is this winning? Are we winning right now? I'm saying, I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan. We don't win much, so I don't know what it looks like. It's unrecognizable. But I'm asking y'all, are we winning?
Bobby,
I mean,
what do you think we can expect to see in the next 24, 48 hours here?
I'm glad you asked. First, let's talk about the military side of it. You're going to see retaliations. Multiple reports saying the battle rhythm is going to be multiple strikes, pause, assess for a couple of hours, see what happens. Multiple strikes, pause, assess. Now, that's going to give planners, the actual executors of the mission, um, time to A, and I know it's going to sound crazy, look at their stockpiles of ammunition and this, that, and the other, see where they're being combat effective, see if they got to restrike certain areas because there is a plan, trust me, on priority targets. That's number one. Number two, from the political justification standpoint, right? The you will see the continuous grasping of straws the first 24 to 48 hours of this. What reasoning resonates best with the American people? What do we think will test market that will justify these actions? Because here's the thing: Israel's going to say how great America is for standing with them and making sure that they are protected. That's fine for you. Great for you, Israel. United States, though, is like, what are we doing? And they don't have a real justification. They can't say it's the nuclear problem because you obliterated it and you were in negotiation with it and there was progress made and you said the hell with it. So what is it? Now they're talking about missile stockpiles and making sure that the region is safe. They're going to have to come up with something, not just for the American people, but for the European Union, the NATO allies, all of these people who are like, what are you dragging us into? And then here's the third piece. People need to watch very closely with a third eye what China and Russia does as this unfolds. Do they try to assert themselves into a power vacuum? Do they position themselves as direct allies of Iran? And if so, do we back down because Trump is Putin's puppet, right? How does this play out with them two? Because I think today is a major pivot point, not just with Trump and the administration, not just with Middle Eastern policy, but international relations as a whole. Because the United States picked a fight with the one country that has three things in my mind that we are not really accounting for. Number one, the fanaticism of the religious part of their government structure. Okay. The Ayatollah and company will fight to the very bitter end to a degree to see that they maintain their regime. Number two, the fact that we, the United States, have no stated end goal or objective to this whole thing. And number three, the ripple effect, not just with our allies, but how China and Russia responds to Iran and how they see the world playing out now. The United States does not have the political will to get sucked into another years long war. So what does de-escalation look like? How does Trump get off the exit ramp where he doesn't look like a total buffoon and the United States does not look clown while not ceding major power or political clout with the rest of the world? These are the things that I'm trying to figure out, but that no one has really laid out for me.
We know that this is something that Netanyahu spent a lot of time talking about because as you mentioned, there's footage of him for the last 30 years saying that Iran is 6 months away from getting a bomb. He has wanted this war forever and ever. What do you see his end goal being here?
Oh, wait, say that last part again. I want to make sure I get this right.
What do you see Netanyahu's end goal being?
I think Netanyahu's end goal is, well, I divide it into two sections. I do believe he genuinely cares about Israel. I do, obviously. So there's an end goal for Israel. There's an end goal for him.
Mhm,
I believe that he wants Iran, the current regime, completely eradicated,
mhm,
um, and a puppet regime a regime that will back Israel's existence, right to exist, which, okay, got it, but also will recognize Israel as the preeminent power of the Middle East. I think it goes beyond their survival. I think he wants actual Middle East supremacy.
mm,
And I say that based on things that he has said in the past, how he will disregard the rights of others to exist while pushing forward Israel's right to exist. I find that interesting. The second piece, though, is him. He wants to be held in such high esteem that basically the internal politics he's dealing with gets thrown out the window. That he's such a hero. He's the guy that saved us from Iran. We'll dismiss all these corruption charges. We'll dismiss all of this and
mm,
basically put himself in a position to continue to be prime minister. I think it's a twofold thing. Um, and he realizes that he needs the United States in order to pull that off. Can't do it without us. Can't do it without us. That's why every time he gets the opportunity, he's at the White House
right.
personally. He's not sending envoys. He's not sending ambassadors. He himself is going there,
Mhm,
personally appealing to the ego of Donald Trump. Mind you, he tried this with other presidents. Yeah, he really didn't like Obama because Obama's like, yeah, it's interesting, but not compelling. And so now you're in a situation where he has someone that he knows he has his ear to. He's offered the transactional aspect that Trump needs with Gaza, right? And the development of Gaza and
right.
sending Witkoff, a real estate guy, to Gaza and all of
And
this. He
Kushner.
understands, and Kushner, yeah, they he speaks the language
Mhm,
of transaction that Trump loves. And so he realizes, I honestly believe Netanyahu realizes he's got a very small window where
mm,
these things are in his favor. And he's got to strike as hard as he can and as long as he can. But when you see other Israelis, other Jewish people around the world saying, "What are we doing?" That should be a red flag. I mean, very vocally saying it,
right.
because I'm smart enough to separate the government of Israel from the people of Israel. Those are two separate
Right,
entities,
and the people
right?
of Israel have massively protested against Netanyahu over his war in Gaza, but he, as you pointed out, has suspended elections.
Exactly. Exactly. So the people who he's supposed to be accountable to have not been able to have a voice to weigh in on what he and the government are doing. And that is a key aspect of this. And by the way, Trump loves that and would
Right,
love to do it here with the midterms,
yes.
making it full circle.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier, if you're just joining us, about, the fact that Trump actually posted an article in the middle of the night from a right-wing news site talking about how Iran, interfered in the last 2 elections, presidential elections here in the US, and now we're bombing them. This is something that came from our president, in the run-up to, a massive strike on Iran, which has resulted in Iran, uh, striking back, in countries that have US military bases.
Yeah. And now, the shit is real, as as we would say. I mean, and here's the thing. I just want someone to define, like I said, two things. Number one, what the end state looks like, and number two, where's the exit route? Sun Tzu talks about giving your enemies a way out.
Mhm,
Okay. But when you're being driven by ego and not policy, that way out may be very clouded. And I don't think that there is real policy driving any of this. I think it's very ego driven. I think it's very much based on the fact that distractions are needed here in the United States and in Israel when you really think about it. And I honestly think that this whole thing started because someone who President Trump hated was able to succeed in an area that he has not, and he wants to reset that script. So
and I
it's
take
been
it
interesting.
you're referring to President Barack Obama, who
Yep.
brokered, the
Yep.
initial agreement with Iran for its nuclear capabilities.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. We had a deal. The world agreed on it. Iran agreed on it, and it was working. And then it was ripped up in the first administration. And we have been shooting behind target ever since. And now, Iran is under a complete internet blackout. They have shut down communication in and out there. You are getting clips of what's happening at military bases all over the Middle East. You have over 50 something thousand Americans in that area easily, easily, despite trying to be evacuated. And here's the other thing, Bahrain, depending on the status of the service member, they have family members there too that are subjected at these bases. And so President Trump, trying to, I guess, get us ready, said in that speech, "Hey, there may be American casualties." And I'm like, "You think?" And here's the thing: he cannot tell you what for. That's all I want to know. What for? What for?
Bobby, before we wrap up here, um, any final thoughts from you, especially for folks who, probably have not been here the whole time?
Yeah. We are repeating mistakes of the past, and we're repeating mistakes that cost the world millions of lives. What I mean by that is, if you know anything about history, I'm not talking about World War II. I'm talking about World War One, where you had a bunch of isolationist policies sprinkled in with some pretty ridiculous alliances, and you had a spark of an assassination that started something that lit a world on fire for almost 30 years. With the American foreign policy being as such, where it's an isolationist policy 2.0 in a lot of respects, America first, and you abdicate your world leading role that took 80 years to develop and all of a sudden turn on a dime. And then you go out of your way to single out certain regimes, this, that, and the other, and unilaterally act both internally because Congress is not involved and externally because NATO, the UN are not involved. You set yourself up for unforeseen consequences. Whenever you have a high concentration of military forces in a small, relatively small area like the Middle East, and then you talk yourself into attacking, and you see retaliation immediately, and you have a regime that is threatened, there are going to be unintended consequences politically, militarily, you know, that we are not thinking through, that have not been addressed, that have not been brought up. And so now we are reliant upon, in just my humble opinion, a group of people who are more sycophants than they are subject matter experts. Why? Because you eliminated all of them when you came into office. You fired people who have centuries of subject matter expertise in the State Department, in the White House, career people that you got rid of. And you replaced them with the Stephen Millers of the world and people who are fanatics but don't know a god dang thing about how this works, the history behind it. And now you're at their mercy to come up with policy, which is why you cannot define the end state, which is why you cannot define the goals of why we're going and doing this, which is why you said that something was obliterated that apparently we're reattacking now, even though it's supposed to be gone. This is a circus led by a ringmaster whose ego will not allow him to recognize the fact that the world is now a much more dangerous place because of these actions. And it's scary.
Bobby, I can't thank you enough for joining us for so long this morning. Um, Thank you. I know we'll be standing by with you as this situation continues to unfold and we learn more about the operations in Iran and their retaliation across the Middle East as well. Thank you to all of you for joining us so early on a Saturday morning. Please stay with us on Lincoln Square. We will have ongoing coverage of this. Uh, Bobby, any final thoughts from you?
Pay attention to what's going on, but do not allow yourself to be sucked into the point where you become obsessive like some of us. And call your Congress people and say what the actual hell is going on. They have got to hold him accountable for all of these actions because if not, we could get sucked into something way bigger.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you joining us. And Bobby, thank you again.
No problem. Thanks, everyone.